Well, welcome back, everybody. We are glad that you're joining us in our series through the book of Ecclesiastes. And so we've broken it up into sections. And so I have chapters 7 through 9, which is sort of the middle or maybe latter part of the book, not quite to the resolution that we'll find in the end. This is kind of a different book, as you have discovered it with us over the last few days, in that it seems kind of depressing a little bit, and there's not a lot of answers offered thus far, other than everything is meaningless, everything is hevel, in which everybody else has kind of gone into, and so I won't address that again, but just remember Kate's illustration of trying to grasp water, trying to grasp smoke, and it doesn't work if you've tried that before. And so kind of what I want to focus on is in chapter 7, so starting in verse 13, there's an interesting kind of phrase, and then moving on down into 15. So the first thing I want to look at is this 13, chapter 7, verse 13. Consider what God has done. Who can straighten what he has made crooked? When times are happy, be happy. But when times are bad, consider this. God has made the one as well as the other, meaning God has made the good times as well as the other, the bad times. Therefore, no one can discover anything about their future. Now, this on the surface level, honestly, is kind of depressing to read. But I think there's a lot of wisdom in this that we can take of we are not in control of everything. And so we are to live our lives, and we are to love the people who God has put in front of us. We are to love our families and the friendships that we have, and the opportunities that we have to love one another. We're supposed to take full advantage of that, but at the end of the day, understand that we aren't in control of everything, that everything is not up to me. And so we've seen that in our circumstances right now, as we all have this weird sense of a lack of control right now, with stuff going on in the stock market and stuff going on all over the world that we can't stop, that we on our own powers can't stop. And it's interesting to me as we kind of look around at civilization and how much we have developed, in all of this technology and skyscrapers and massive cities and incredible hospitals and all of this stuff. But at the end of the day, we can't stop a virus, and we can't stop things from happening. And so we can build our buildings as big as we want, but at the end of the day, we aren't in control. And so in this moment, as Christians, that leads us to have hope. And so we can trust that our God is in control and that he's a good God. And so instead of that causing us to fear losing control, really we can turn that into causing us to have hope, that it's God who we trust, that I don't have to work everything out in my life, that there is a higher power, there is a God who knows way more than I know, who is working everything out in my life. And so the pressure then for us to make everything perfect goes away. And then continuing on in another kind of interesting verse is this, starting again in verse 15. In this meaningless life of mine, I have seen both of these, the righteous perishing in their righteousness, and the wicked living long in their wickedness. Do not be over righteous, neither be over wise. Why destroy yourself? Interesting that he would say, don't be over wise or over righteous. We would think, shouldn't you do that? He keeps going, don't be over wicked, and do not be a fool. Why die before your time? It is good to grasp the one and not the other, and not let go of the other one. Whoever fears God will avoid all extremes. And so the first time I read through that, I was kind of taken aback. It makes sense to say the wicked living long in their wickedness, don't be over wicked. We would all say, yes, of course. You know, that is not a good thing to do. But to not be over righteous, that doesn't necessarily make sense. And for it to say, the righteous perishing in their righteousness. And one of the commentaries I read on this was really interesting, was saying that sometimes in our own perfectionism, in following after God, we are so legalistic almost of, I have to do all of these things and achieve this level of righteousness, that we die trying. meaning that ourselves, we get defeated by not attaining this perfection that we're seeking after, by not becoming this perfect version of ourselves, this high bar that we've set for ourselves, that we end up being miserable. And so what I see as the challenge here is for us in our pursuit of godliness, which we should have, we have to have a balance of grace. That we have to understand, just as it said a few verses earlier, that we aren't in control of everything, that God is. And so although we do pursue godliness and we pursue holiness, those are important things, sometimes we can become so legalistic that we wear ourselves out and we become lost in the effort and that everything is about me and what I'm doing. And so we have a warning here of the righteous perishing in their righteousness. And so is our hope found on me, or is it found on God? And then the last thing I kind of want to talk about is it mentions a lot in these 3 chapters here that everyone has a common destiny. That whether you're poor or you're rich, whether you're wise or you're a fool, we all have a common destiny, and that is, of course, death. And that, again, sounds horrifyingly depressing, but Jonathan Edwards, who you might recognize from Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, is something I had to read when I was a freshman in high school, and I remember thinking, I was being very scared of who this guy was. But he was an incredible man, incredible preacher, Puritan preacher, who led the First Great Awakening in America. And so he's an incredible man, and in his resolutions, in things that he did or he tried to do throughout his life, one of the first ones that he talks about is to think often of his own death and the circumstances that surround it. And so what Jonathan Edwards was saying there, and I think what we can glean from this text in Ecclesiastes, is there's something sort of sobering about realizing that we're all human, about realizing that at some point our lives will come to an end. And there's something in thinking about that challenges us today, of we can sort of become so lost in our comforts of everyday life that we miss out on the growth, and we miss out on the challenges, and we get into routines. And so then to think about the common destiny for all of us, that all of us at one point or another are going to pass away, at first seems kind of morbid, and maybe it is morbid, but there is a lot of growth that can come from that. To think often of our own death and the circumstances that surround it, of what kind of man do I want to be? What kind of husband do I want to be? What kind of legacy do I want to leave? And is what I'm doing today leading towards that? And so that's kind of my challenge for you in this passage of Scripture, is to think about that, to think about who is it that you want to be known for? Like what are the things that when people think of you, you want to be known for? And then reflect on your days today, or this weird circumstances we're in, of is what I'm doing reflecting that? Is my daily routine, or the people I'm coming into contact with, are they seeing that in me? And so that's my challenge for you. And tomorrow, as we wrap up the book of Ecclesiastes, I hope that you've enjoyed this, and it's been a little bit different text for you to go through than maybe what you normally do. I know it's been a challenge for me, and so we love you, we miss you, and we really do hope to see you soon.